Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Today's webinar is going to be about talking about the back knee. So it'd be the rear knee. Most of you right-handed. So it's going to be talking about what we're looking for out of that, and both the face on and down the line. And we're going to be talking about the hip and how it's designed to move. All right, and then we're going to be talking about how you rotate through the thoracic and how that affects the angles that you create with your upper body. And lower body, they affect each other. The upper body can affect the lower body, and the lower body can affect the upper body. So either one of them can play that game. Arms can affect the body, wrist as well. We're not going to get into all that stuff. It's not really. We talk so much about the function of the arms and wrist because of the fact that that's your direct connection with the golf club. Once you put your hands on there, your wrist and your arms really dictate a lot of your timing. Your eyes play a big factor in that as well. But we're going to talk about the body today a little bit more. So especially coming in, not really winter season, but we're starting to come into off season. So it's a good time for you players that haven't been really training. Maybe you've been out of it playing a lot of golf, which most of you have been on here. The veterans of our program know how big I am about playing a ton of golf. You can't play too many holes. You can hit too many range balls. Most people do. They practice air swings too much. They practice on the range too much. You can't play too much golf on the course in competition golf, in my opinion. So that being said, we're starting to transition now where you can start to train a little bit more in your golf swing. You can start to really, put yourself together a really strong program from now and through the winter to get to your body and your mind to come into the next season. You should be thinking right now, in my opinion, even though you're playing right now, should be playing, hopefully, depending on which region you're in. But you should be considering, what can I do to make my short game better, my long game better, my body better, my mind better, everything to have better synergy for, 2018 in the spring or summer, whenever your season allows you to play again. Or if you play year round, still, should be training off season, in my opinion. Pretty strong opinion on that too, by the way. So anyway, so let's get with it. With the back knee, probably the biggest question, and I get that a lot of either teachers will ask me, or a lot of really good players, or even just regular players that they're high handicaps. It's a common question. And it's like, how much knee flex should I have in the backswing? How much should I have in setup? Really, try to use vocabulary on these words because they're just all labels. But I do believe that your vocabulary can be really important. So how you label something, say squat versus pressing or squat versus sinking. If you listen to how I say it and how I describe the differences, a lot of times if you've seen our webinars before, you'll understand that there's a difference in what I'm talking about. So we're going to go into that right now. So in how much do you have? What's variable? It addressed, man, you're going to see players on all tours that are going to have almost zero knee flex. I wouldn't say they're completely locked, but they have very, very, very little. I would say Dustin Johnson right here is fairly neutral to it. Actually, that's still quite a bit of flex right there before he pulls the trigger in the backswing. But it's not like if you looked at the old photos of like maybe a Nick Faldo or some of those others that had a lot of knee flex. It's a lot of variables with that. I don't like a lot of knee flex at address. I don't like it a lot in the backswing either. And the reason why that is because when this knee overflexes, so if you can see, if we just use a basic reference here, and I draw this, let's just say it's not a straight line, but it's hitting right, let's say close to the ball, the foot there. Let's say he's overflexed, and this is out over towards the toe here. All right. That's going to change the function of his hip. It's also going to make, I don't care what player it is, it's going to make it harder to rotate this hip and to be better face on. It's going to make it harder to rotate correctly, which is really clockwise. But it also is going to take the silkiness part of it away. It's going to have a stiffer look to it. So by that, you typically won't turn in here as well. So the quality won't be as good in your rotation of the hip and usually the upper body as well. It'll affect the upper body, even the arms, by too much flex. And so if you have too much flex, you're going to lock up a lot of the chi or the energy, whatever you want to call it. You're going to start changing angles. So you're getting a little bit into engineering as well. Your delivery is going to probably change unless you recover. It makes it much more difficult to rotate physically. So the best way I can have somebody do this is do like almost a deep squat and try to turn your body. Like so if you did a deep squat, not in your golf swing, don't do this with golf club. If you just squat it down, let's just say way down, like halfway, not even a full deep squat, and then you try to turn and try to create extension, you're going to realize it's really, really, really difficult because the squatting is limiting the amount of freedom in not only your upper body, but also in your rotation of your hip. So we don't want a lot. I don't teach. I would teach even less than this. I like it usually at the tongue of the shoe, even more back than that, a little bit more like Roy McIlroy, Tiger in the day. He's kind of in between both of those. But so when it goes into posture, we're not going in there today like upper and lower and all that. That gets complex. We usually try to do that in the winter. But knee is definitely your knee flex. It affects your posture. All right, it affects your ability to rotate, and it also affects the ability to create. It makes it much more difficult. So it's going to have a little more. Most people will have too much tension if they try to squat that into that back leg. All right. And it affects the direction that the rotation goes depending on the physical limitation of the player. So I know that's a lot. You may have to come back and listen to this and so forth because we haven't even started up yet. But that's the basics. So I like it either the tongue of the shoe or to the ball of the foot would be max. That is the absolute max. Most people only need it to the tongue of the shoe. If you lock the knee completely, again, you're going to affect your arms, you're going to affect your body and how it pivots and rotates and the silkiness of it. It'll be a whole different thing. So you want just a little bit, but you don't want to overdo it, and you definitely don't want to be just completely locked unless you learn how to get back into it real late. So anyway, with that said, we'll go back. And so as it goes through the motions of the swing, you have to remember this is a full motion. So when we get to it, we're not really a position here, but like if you look, there's a movement from the entire time from takeaway back. And if you look, this is where it kind of gets into knee and hip, and I'll try to deal with the hip by itself in a little bit. But right here, if you look, because he allows the knee to go ahead and get back to like really the tongue of the shoe here, that allows his thoracic to rotate more. And so what I mean by that is if his knee was flexed here, that would affect his ability to get the quality of rotation he gets through his thoracic spine. There is absolutely no question. And even as athletic as he is, he's taken advantage of really human biomechanics by doing this because he's freeing up the hip, yep, for sure, which is freeing up the spine, but he's doing that through the ability to keep his his knee. I wouldn't say it's definitely not locked here, but it's firm, it's rooted. That's a whole different ball game, but it's rooted. This right side is definitely rooted. His left side is definitely rooted, but that knee has near as much flex as you can see on this front foot. Okay. And if you study my rooting videos, you'll understand that those are public videos, and there's nothing to hide there. If you study them, you'll know more about rooting and ground reaction forces than I believe that you could ever imagine if you really understand it and you start listening to what I'm talking about in those videos. So, and it does matter because the quality of your rotation, the function of the knee and the hip, it definitely, if you have major issues there, you're going to be scrambling. When I say scrambling, not tee to green, you're going to be scrambling in transition, trying to get back to it to where kind of recover out of it and then back into it. There's going to be more movements with your body than you really need. This is a really great quality movement because he's really opened up his right side. He's allowed that knee to go back. If he kept it flexed, this would all be different. He would be different, and he could still play with his knee flexed. Do not get me wrong with that. It's just he's got a mechanical advantage by doing this. All right, so that kind of covers the knee and so forth. Now, what you'll see in the hip, but we're going to come back. We're still staying on the knee for right now. What you'll see is that knee, it even locks up even more. So even right there, even though that knee is at that, it's really, there may be a few degrees of flexion in that knee, but it's not much. So now, but you can see it's just almost completely like a rod in transition. All right, but that you got to realize with this he's rooting. All right, you can see he can't really root from his toes here, which is something that I talk about. If you can root, you want to root as close as you can. He's still rooting in here in this part of the area. He's not rooting from the toes because that would take even more talent. So he's kind of giving up a little bit of that root in the inside part of the foot. But he with that, he still, that leg, if you were to push on it there, I guarantee you'd feel like you're hitting a brick wall. So he still has a great root. He's just rooting from a different area. All right, which is, I think if you've trained here, you understand what that means. And if not, just send me some questions later about that. So well, he's in transition here, so now we're going to have to come out of transition. And when you see it, now what you're going to see is happens with these great players. He's opened up his body. He's let the knee release. He's let his hip release, rotate correctly. And now you're going to see this knee come back and recover. So and it's just natural. This is where the sinking part comes back involved. And you're going to see a tremendous amount of flex now. He's going to get all the way probably right up to the edge of that toe that you'll see with that line in his downswing. That's not a squat. So when it comes here, this is where I talk about. Now you have to realize right in here, in this area, it's probably even happened a foot. Even if you went back to here, it's probably he's even in his mind right now trying to time up the sinking. So when you see now he's sinking, right? Now you see that both knees get over the tops of the feet to the very tips, right? But if he was to try to do this in his backswing, it would look like that. He really wouldn't have any turn. He wouldn't be able to get his body back. He wouldn't be able to really open and all those things. But so because he's opened up, it's called high to low. I call it high to low, and I learned this in Tai Chi years ago, learning how to sink and rise, high to low, however you want to do it. Sinking and rising is a better terminology. You hear he's actually rising, and then he starts to sink. Not rising with his knee flex or anything like that, but if you see he starts to go in extension here, that's a form of rising. Then he'll start to sink himself down, so he's going really high to low, but sinking and rising. All right, and some people do it differently. You can do it different ways. You just have to know what you're really trying to do. But if you over flex those knees and you get into this position here, and if this is say that's your posture to dress, I mean, don't look at the openness and all that. I'm just saying the amount of knee flex. If we back that up to here, and you start with that much knee flex, which I see a lot of people do, they're either really locked or they're overflexed, right? And if you do that, you're going to limit your ability to rotate, especially if you try to keep that. It's going to restrict the hip turn too much. And that's another issue that we get back into is how much do you turn the hips? And that walks us really into the second part of this, which is how much do you rotate? How much does that hip rotate? Well, if you measure that, I'm going to promise you that's a lot of hip turn. That is not your stock 45-90. He is opening that back hip, his entire hips. And he's doing that because he's rooted himself through the ground, not with just one leg, but with both legs. And he's also done it when you look at face on by creating certain angles with his upper body. And also when you look at face on, the tilting and the pitching of the body that you see here, those determine how well you root into the ground. And then when you go face on, it's how much centerness you have over your rotation. If you move way off the ball, you're going to lose a root on your left side. There's just no doubt, or your lead side. And if you move hard left, like if you're stack and tilt, you're going to lose the root on your right side. The best rotation in the world is centered. You wouldn't go to a yoga class and work and do a standing tree and move hard left or hard right because you would lose your root. All right. I don't care whatever you do, however you want to look at it. You don't want to lose the entire root, especially in golf. You want to be able to keep the centerness of rotation in both feet in transition, both rooted into the ground, so they can counter torque back to the target side and bring rotation and mass momentum through the golf ball. There's absolutely no question about that. And you're taking rotational power and linear power, and you're pulling those all together, and that creates a wild ride for the golf ball down the middle and long. So this is what he does. But you don't have to understand it. It's just I would if you're in our program, I would really spend time understanding how you have to, because rooting is not squatting. It's not about how much you squat. If you squatted here, his hip rotation would be changed. It would be a different look. And there's people on tour that do that, but they have tremendous amount of thoracic mobility and wrist mobility, and they know what to do to recover with the wrist and arms. He's making it actually very simple with what he's doing. Jordan Spieth does it's not the same. He's got a little bit more flex. If you take like even Roy McIlroy has a lot of the same looks, Tiger in the old days. The more flex you have in that back leg, is what I'm saying is the more mobility you better have in your upper body and your whole body. You better have full mobility, but you also better have strength to root yourself down. So going back to that hip he's opened that hip tremendous amount, but he has rooted himself down. So we're going to take a look at that, face on. And so when we do this, we go face on. So we're here. This is what I was talking about. you'll see a better quality, and we'll look at this a little bit more here in a little bit, and it's not went that much. That's the direction, because that hip, it's a ball socket joint. It's designed to rotate, all right? So he's designed to internally rotate with that hip on both sides. And when he does that, he's keeping his posture. And you say, well, that's behind the ball. That's really where he started. He didn't move off of it, didn't do anything like that. He's behind the ball because the ball position is more forward with a driver than it is with an iron. So it looks like he's way off of it. He's not off of it, I'm telling you. So he's just learned how to root through his center through training in the gym. So you can see where he starts. And you don't want to try to move way off the ball. And he's not trying to tilt his body to the right, remember? And if you've watched our videos, he's not trying to K up or whatever, or tilt. He's not trying to get his head way back here. Don't exaggerate that. All he's doing is the ball position it's in a different position. This camera's not perfectly square, but it's close enough. He's just behind it naturally. He's not trying to get behind the ball or tilt his body or any of that stuff. It's already there. He's just trying to, actually, what he's trying to do, I guarantee you, in his mind, is feel level as he can. And that's not a level, but I'm just like a cross right here to his center, across the shoulders, level and level, even though he doesn't look like that, because once the right hand is below, that's going to automatically give you tilt. You don't need to ever try to tilt. And he wants his lower and his upper body to feel as level as he possibly can, even though when you look at it, it's not. And guarantee you he doesn't want to play uphill golf and tilt his body like this and kick his right knee and all that. That's craziness. And that used to be and still is taught in several systems. You do not want to do that. You want to be as free with your body as you can. And this, by how he sets up, allows him to do that, and how he rotates and uses that knee and that spine and keeps his center. That is why he has really clean rotation through the top. And then you can see he's very clean coming through. So. And you say, why would I use Dustin Johnson? And I've told this to so many players. Teachers, there's for a long time, because teachers don't understand really the body, and they don't, a lot of times, really don't even understand the club that well. And I'm not knocking them. That's just up to them, and they can do whatever they want. They really don't understand really where the energy. They think square is not square. And so when they look at a bowed left wrist, whatever you want to call it, or bent right wrist at the top, and they see all that, they say, oh man, you got to change that. He's going to have a horrible injury in it. No, he's never had an injury in that area. He's not going to. He knows what he's doing. He's got tremendous amount of fluidity or silkiness. The silkiness that he has in his golf swing relative to the power ratio that he presses down into the ground is the best that I've ever seen on the tour. He is the best ball striker that I have ever seen on the PGA Tour. I have said that now for when I traveled and coached on the PGA Tour, which is about 5 years ago. There was one player that I looked at that I went, oh, okay, that's different. And I've said this on several webinars in the past, and that would be Dustin Johnson. And I say that he was not number one in the world. I think he'd won a tournament every year, and putting was not really very good at all. His wedge play was not very good at all, and he was a pitiful chipper. So when you can do that and still win each year on the tour and compete, and probably should have won 2 or 3 majors since he started, that's when you know you have somebody that can really light it up as far as ball striking. And that he is, like I said, the best that I have ever seen, and I have seen them all. That anybody in the modern era and anybody that you've seen in the past 15 years, Tiger Woods down, there's only one man that I've seen that where I went, that is he is phenomenal, freaky phenomenal, and it's every single day. It's not day to day. He's a phenomenal driver. He drives it like Greg Norman, but hits it like Tiger Woods used to hit it, except now further. He's his own guy, and he hits his irons phenomenal. He's a phenomenal wedge player. And when his putting is on, usually, you can count up. Definitely it's going to be a top 3, and he's probably going to win, no matter who's in the field. I don't care who it is. So if his putting's on, he puts in the level where Jordan, if he's just in the ballpark, he didn't even have to putt as well as him. He puts anywhere even close to in that area, he's walking away with a win. Because and even the stats don't even tell it. Stats still say he's number 1 ball striker or whatever, but it doesn't do it justice. He's just totally different. And so I use him in a lot of this because some people say, well, he's athletic and all this. Yeah, he's athletic. I'm not doubting that. I'm not saying that. He's huge. I mean, when you walk up to him on the range right beside him, he towers me. I'm 5'10". That used to be the old thing back in the 90s. 5'10" was kind of normal. Now you're a midget out there. But it's not because he's tall, and it's not because of all this athletic ability. Yeah, he's got that. It's awesome. But he's got great mechanics. And they can say, well, that's through the athletic part. Well, not really, because I've seen athletic people that can't break 150, and they can do a 48-inch box jump, and they can pass every functional golf test that's ever been made, and they don't have any limitations, and they can't play. So it's not just athletic. He just knows he has found a way through probably playing golf and visualization and working on his body and all these things correlated that have allowed him to take advantage of not only mechanics, but he takes advantage of his height, his arm length. He takes advantage of everything, torque, speed, all of it. And so he's a master of it, and he doesn't have to know that he is, and that makes him even more dangerous. It makes any player more dangerous when you don't even know and you're just capable. You just do it because you're not even thinking about it. And he guarantee you he doesn't think about all this stuff. He already has it. He has created. He has found it, and he's found it probably not through thought. He's found it through, like I said, all those things I talked about before accumulated into just now. This is what he is. All right, and so forth. So that's why I use him so much, and he uses a swing that a senior golfer should be doing this. I mean, there's no way if you look at what I've said today about, if you look at what I'm talking about today, opening up the right side. You go to any senior golfer book from now and 100 years from ago, and anybody when you start to get older, they'll tell you need to turn your right side more. Well, he doesn't. He's a kid, and he can turn his right side more than anybody on the planet probably, and maintain rooting and rotation, clean rotation. So what my point is, and he can restrict it and do a lot more than everybody else. He doesn't. He opens that. Whether you're a senior golfer or a junior golfer or 25, you should open up your body and you should root from the feet. You don't have to root from the knee. You root from the feet. And you root for mechanics of the upper body, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. So if your upper body is off, let me promise you, your ground reaction forces and your rooting will be off as well. You can bet your bottom dollar. But he's doing what you would tell a senior golfer to do. So it's not like, what I'm saying is, like, it's not because, oh, he's just so mobile and all this. Well, yeah, he is. But he's taking advantage of all the mechanics he would as a senior golfer. But he's like a junior golfer with talent and athletic ability. And so that's how I wanted to explain that and why I used Dustin Johnson as a model. So I don't look at all this stuff. I don't care about it. If you understand how this works, and I can assure you I do, this is actually a tremendous mechanical advantage what he's doing with it's not the left wrist anyway. We won't get into that, but it's the forearm, the back forearm, and how he's using the back wrist, and then also how he uses the left arm out of this transition zone. Those are the reasons, like some of the phenomenal things that he creates just with his arms. But today is really about learning your body. Okay, now so when we go to upper body, back to face on, we understand about the knee, we understand about the right side, how the hip's designed to move. Doesn't mean you have to move it like that. Colin Montgomery does not do this. He kind of shifts and he rocks, but he creates that silkiness. And remember, that's a big thing. Silkiness, you have to be perfect. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to find out what's the best way for you to move. If you start rocking back and forth, most people can't even touch the golf ball. So you're designed to rotate like he was doing. So that's the reason why I'm explaining this. But you'll see players that don't follow this pattern, that don't look exactly like this in a lot of different ways. And that's kind of our whole point. But if you're looking at quality and what you're really looking for, if you're trying to train, that's how you're designed to move. Okay, just like that, where we talked about the hip and the knee, and now creating, let's just say his ear is right here, like I use this reference because the neck moves, but really, like, if he's really maintained that from the beginning, even though he's had cervical rotation right here and all that stuff, and he's got beautiful thoracic, and he's got right side rotation, he's allowed his knee to do whatever, and he's rooted from the foot. So we know both feet are rooted here because he's kept his center. But let me show you this so you understand. If he moves, let's just say his ear position is right here. Now, again, when I say it's just using it as a reference, it's common sense and simple. But if he's over here, that right side right now, he would lose his right side root too as well. But his right side would be a little more rooted than here. This would have zero root. So he would have nothing to pull back with from the left side and these muscles through here. He would have nothing to pull up because of the position he's put his upper body in. Now, this is what I was saying earlier. Let's say if we're just looking at stick movements here, and his ear is right there. Now this left side is really heavy, and this right side is dead. Okay, and so he has no root. So the counter torquing movements between the feet, which is going to cultivate and pull the hips, shoulders, and then the arm and everything back and through the ball, and give you the best possibilities to hit it straight and long, you start to lose some of that. It's not that you can't, but if you load over here and you load this left side hard over here, all right, and you got nothing here, then you kind of got to, if you watch Stack and Tilt, they go backwards through the ball to find both the centers again. All right. Whereas somebody that does it like we're talking about, when vice versa, if you went over here, you have to shift back to get your spine back aligned, and then you start to unwind. It's a whole trickier, much trickier way of doing it. There's been players in the past that have been able to. You could look at Curtis Strange. You could look at Hal Sutton. They could move off of it, move back into it, and rotate and keep the club face square and play really good golf. It's just most people cannot do that. And you're giving up a lot of power and by doing that, because you're moving off and center, and then you're having to turn and in square. There's just more movement. Whereas if you look like this, he's just truly rotating around the center of his axis. All right, it's very simple. So now at the top of his swing, he's got the root in both feet here, and so when he starts to unload from his hips and his shoulders, and they all start to work as one this way, back this way, it's creating that counter torque back into the ground, and you'll start to see the clearing is a lot cleaner. He doesn't have to jump, he doesn't lean, he doesn't fall back, he doesn't really do a lot of that stuff. So that's really what I'm talking about with understanding how your upper body affects your lower body. I guarantee you move that head one way or the other, it's affecting what's going on down here with your feet and what your ability is to do. Now you can recover from anything, but I can't assume that anybody online is going to be able to recover. I can't factor that in, that you might be able to be over here, and then you shift back over here halfway down, and then you unwind, and you can keep the club face square through the ball. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you to lean over here and be stacked and tilt and blow your back out and go back this way through the ball, play uphill through the ball, and try to keep the face square through the ball. And you can't maintain great body mechanics. Either one of them's got massive manipulations and it's not really designed. It's really not what you're designed to do. Although it's a beautiful art, because there's not one way to do it. But if you find your flow and your slot, that's when I always talk about the wrist and arms and other webinars, and I'll always continue. If you understand that, you can get away with a lot of stuff. But if you're wanting to learn body mechanics and how you need to move, this webinar is really designed to help you understand that. If you study the rooting videos on those public videos I made, I do talk about this knee. I'm not going into it today, and I talk about the direction it goes, and you'll see a lot of similarities. But it's really to get all of this. The knee plays a major factor. Your spine, your rotation through your spine plays a major factor, and your quality of rotation through your hip. And then if I'm going to continue, which I will for just a minute, when I go this direction, these angles that you create, when most people turn, they get really kind of up with their body. You call it loose posture, you can call it standing up, I don't really care, it doesn't matter. But their head might be up in here, like they back out this way. But if you look at him, he's crept good angles and good body mechanics, pressing like the angles are matching up relative to where he's striking. Where he's not, even though I don't look at right here, I look at the axis up through the middle of the spine. Where's that location at? And he's in the axis here. If you start looking at like shoulders, and they make a difference. If you pitch those down and you drop them straight vertical, it changes the ability. It changes you how you can rotate into that hip. It changes a lot of things. Changes your arms, and then vice versa. The flatter you get, the more level it changes as well. But back bending, extending through the back, and that comes back in here, you're going to start seeing a whole flatter look. Then, again, I'm not trying to be crazy here, but you can recover and recover those angles and drive those angles back and down through the ball. There's a lot of ways you can recover and not you might be steep, your axis of rotation may be steep going back. And I'm not saying the arms, I'm just saying your axis of rotation may be steep going back, and you recover and find it, and that's wonderful. If you do, it may be really kind of I was going to say flat. Those are simple words. It may be a flat type of rotation, more extension, and then you dive down and go attack the ball in your downswing. So you never know how somebody's really going to recover. But if you want to know a clean way to do it, that's what I just showed you right there. Is really it will help you understand center axis of rotation, the angle, the axis of rotation, and the centerness from the face on. Allow this hip to rotate, allow that knee to go back. You don't have to lock it, just make it silky. And then when you do that, that'll allow some more freedom in this area. So, and you won't look like, I don't look and try to get people to look like this. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to get them to do is get their body mechanics right. So, if you have time, I'll open it for questions right now. I've covered everything I need to cover. You'll see in past webinars we talk a lot about this. I have videos that cover this, but you really this is a good time of year to really start to understand. You're on the first really stage of kind of the off season for a lot of players, depending on location. And this is a great area where you can come in and say, you know, I can start to work on some of these things and start to groove some of these things in and make them natural, make them kind of my thing. And everybody will really look different. But with that being said, because we do so much work on the wrist and the arms, especially the back wrist, back arm, there's some things you'll learn about the lead arm here pretty soon that we'll talk about as we move forward. But we talk about that so much because we know that timing is really based on your wrist, arms, and your eyes. And so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I don't think there's any questions, it looks like. So I will see you in a couple of weeks. I know we've had 2 webinars to start this month off, and that was it's been really good. I don't know if we'll do another webinar this month or not, but we'll have 2 webinars set up for next month. If you have any questions, just feel free to send them in. And until then, good golfing, and hope everybody has a great week and weekend.